Salutations, my dearest friends. My name is Samantha, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 books that I read in 2022. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a yearly wrap-up where I talk about the top 10 books. The 10 books that were my favorites that I would recommend endlessly. Books are by my new favorite authors. I feel like these books also really kind of show my reading taste and what I generally like in books. I sat down to create my list. These 10 books just came to me. Like, they were just right there. These are the books that I've been thinking about all year. These are the books that I've been talking about all year. I've been recommending to my friends. So I was like, you know what? Let me just curate this list a little bit. I want to put something on a list just to have it there and for it to be a number. I really wanted to showcase like 10 books that were beyond 5 stars, that were something special, unlike anything I've ever read, and by some of my favorite authors. So sorry for this long intro, but these are the 10 books that I just love with my whole heart, body, and soul, and I happened to read them last year. These are really in no particular order. I'm not ranking them because I love all of them equally. Kind of went through my Goodreads list from like the beginning of the year to the end of the year, so these are kind of in the order that I read them. So the first one I know might be shocking because this is a dork romance and a lot of people don't like it, but I feel like I've talked about this book so much this year, and it is one of my favorites. And that is Untouchable by Sam Mariano. The chokehold that this book has on me, unmatched. Unfucking matched. I think when I first rated this, I gave it 4 stars because it was so dark. My mind was like, it was a mindfuck. My mind was twisted. Just the writing, I was in shock and awe. And I kept thinking about it and kept thinking about it and kept thinking about it. I have to give it 5 stars. A lot of these books are books that have like stayed on my mind, and this book has definitely done that. So this is a dark bully romance. I read this book because of Jen from the Book Refuge. This book follows Zoe and Carter, and like I said, it is a high school bully romance. So Zoe goes to a really small high school that is big on football. She ends up getting assaulted by one of the football players on the team, and she goes to tell the coach and basically gets him banned from playing his entire senior year. So everyone on the team is real pissed. The guy that got kicked off the team, not our hero, ends up kind of bullying her, harassing her. He's basically trying to have her like redact her statement, and he gets a bunch of his friends to come harass her, and one of those friends is our hero, Carter Mahoney. And Carter ends up taking it a little too far. Now, I will say this book is such a dark romance. He does essentially assault our hero in the first few chapters. He goes through a lot in those first few chapters, and she kind of takes the situation, and instead of being upset by it, she's actually intrigued by our hero and wants to know why he did what he did, and she ends up forming a relationship with him that they kind of push the boundaries of consensual non-consent, and it's such an interesting dynamic. Our heroine is the strongest heroine that I've ever met. Like, if I were to have a favorite heroine in a book, it would probably be her, and something about Carter Mahoney, this hero, like, I love. It's a little toxic, but I love. Next book that is on my top 10 list is another crazy, wild, bonkers book, and that is Push by Nyla Kay. I read this book on Kindle Unlimited and I was obsessed. I read this in the beginning of the year, and I think I've recommended this to almost every single one of my friends because I just want someone to read it and like be there in the journey with me, if that makes sense. This book is so bonkers. Okay, this book is literally so bonkers. It really is, but like stick with me with this plot, okay? So our hero is engaged to his high school sweetheart. They have been married for a really long time. They're madly, deeply in love. So cute. They had a kid when they were in high school, so they were very young parents, and their kid is now in college and is back on Thanksgiving break and is bringing a boyfriend to like introduce her parents to. Okay, so she's bringing her boyfriend, they're married, such a cute setup, right? Well, Dad, our hero in this book, ends up having a very intense connection, attraction to his daughter's boyfriend. Yeah. The dad and the daughter's boyfriend end up getting together, and they stay together for a very good majority of the book, kind of exploring their attraction with one another. And a lot of people like freak out and they're like, what about the daughter? She's fine. She's okay. Things work out. And then the wife, because he's married, our hero's married, she finds out about the affair or of them being together. And instead of feeling like it is an affair and getting upset and things like that, she's like, wow, this is really hot. This is really cute. This is really fun. Can I join in? And she does. So it ends up becoming a polyamorous romance between the married couple and the daughter's boyfriend, a poly triad. I love it. I love it so much. It's wild, it's crazy, it's steamy. Okay, so in 2022, I discovered possibly my favorite author of all time, and that is Sophie Lark. Yes, I've only been reading her for like a year, and I'm obsessed. The problem is I do have a little bit of an obsessive personality, shocker. But when I find an author that I love, I will binge read every single book they've ever written. I don't care if it's in an anthology. I don't care if it's a short story. I'm reading it. I am reading it. And that's how I was with Sophie Lark, okay? I read the first book in her Brutal Birthright series, which is a mafia romance series, and I pretty much read everything in her backlist. I think I have like a couple more that I haven't read because I'm holding on to them. The ones that have to make it on the list are the first two books in the Brutal Birthright series because I feel like this is what started it off for me. So I'm going to be talking about Brutal Prince and Stolen Heir, and they each get a spot on this list because they deserve it. I read this series because of many of my friends, Jen from the Book Refuge, Jessica from Peace Love Books, Madison from Princess of Paperback. Like, so many of my friends were telling me to read this series, and when I picked it up, totally worth the hype. So this is the first book in the Brutal Birthright series called Brutal Prince, and it follows Ada and Callum, and this is an enemies to lovers romance. Both live in Chicago, and Ada is a part of the Italian mafia and Callum is a part of the Irish mafia, and they don't get along. No, they don't. So Ada ends up crashing a party and ends up like almost burning down the house and almost starting a turf war, and Callum is real pissed off. But their parents do not want a turf war and actually want their families to form an alliance so they can be more powerful. They end up setting up an arranged marriage between their children, Ada and Callum, and they are so angry. It's like a true enemies to lovers romance. They do not want to be married. They literally despise each other. They come from completely different worlds, but then they end up having a romance, and it is steamy. It is decadent. It is beautiful writing. I was so obsessed with this book, I literally got a tattoo for it. I feel like that shows my obsession. I'm wearing a long sleeve, so you can't really see it, but I'll show you. I got a little strawberry tattoo right here for this book. That's how obsessed I was with it. You know what the strawberry means? You know, okay? You know. The thing about Sophie Lark is I love her writing. I love her characters. I love her world building and the way like all of her books like effortlessly connect to each other. This book connects to the Kingmaker series, which connects to the Underworld series, and it's like this beautiful arc that when you read all of her books, you can see like the vision. Every word is intentional with her writing. The way she writes her heroines and stands for like female empowerment truly like makes me cry every time. Then the second book is Stolen Heir, and I think this is actually my favorite book in this series. I also have a tattoo for this book on the back of my arm, which I'll just put right here so you can see. It's a Pequeñita Ballerina. Love. Also a part of her Brutal Birthright series, like I said. It is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, sunshine heroine, grumpy hero pairing. So our hero is real pissed off at the Irish and the Italian mafia from the first book. Something happens in the first book that he wants revenge. You do kind of have to read the books in order. So he decides that he is going to kidnap our heroine, who is the youngest daughter of the Irish mafia, and he's going to kind of use her for revenge and also hold her for ransom so that he can kill her family. So it's kind of, I know, it's a little bit of a dark romance in the beginning, end up falling for each other. I love the setting in this book. It gives very gothic romance to me because it's set in like a gothic, dark house, and it's like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Opposites attract. It's so steamy. It's so beautiful. Love, love, love. Since I'm talking about Sophie Lark, I do want to mention a book that I read towards the latter end of the year. This was actually like one of the last books I read of the year. Made it on this list because it is amazing, and that is Anastasia by Sophie Lark. This was much anticipated. I was waiting for this to come out. She announced she was doing an Anastasia retelling. I was so excited, and this one did not disappoint, my friends. It's so good. It's an enemies to lovers fantasy romance that leans heavily on political intrigue. quite a long book, but it is so worth it. It follows Anastasia from when she is a small child all the way up until she's an adult. Father is the ruler of Russia, and there's kind of like a rebellious group in Russia, and the leader of that group, his youngest son, is who Anastasia ends up having a romance with. This also has the most amazing magical element to it. The magic in this book is so fucking cool. The way the political intrigue is set up, the history, all of the side characters, like everything about this book was divine. I feel like me describing it really doesn't even give it justice. This was sweepingly romantic and some of the best writing I've ever read. So I highly recommend it. Okay, the next two books are by the same author, and I definitely think this is probably one of my top favorite authors of all time, and that is Marina Vivancos. It's primarily on Kindle Limited, and most of her books are novellas, like a little less than 200 pages. Talked about her a lot on my channel, and I just feel like she's so freaking underrated. Like, I literally need everyone to read her. She mainly writes male romances, and most of her romances focus a lot on the emotional soulmate aspect. Such great representation. She also focuses on like mental health as well. Just like everything about her books is amazing. So the first one is I've Walked Where You've Been by Marina Vivancos, and this one is a soulmate story. So our heroes grow up in a world where soulmates exist. People find their soulmate when they're like in their 20s. Maybe if they're lucky, they'll find them at like 16 at the earliest, right? Our heroes find their soulmates, each other, when they're like 9 years old. Their entire life changes and they're forced to be together pretty much all the time, or they will feel like a physical illness if they ignore their soulmate bond, or if they have like long distances without seeing and touching each other. So they are complete opposites. One of our heroes is like this shy, very introverted, very intellectual character, and then the other one is like golden retriever energy. He's energetic, loves to play sports and be outside, and just like the complete opposite of his soulmate. So they end up resenting each other. They end up resenting their bond. They're constantly forced to be with one another, but they hate each other and they're awful to each other until they are at the end of high school, about to go into college, and they realize that they're going to be a part of each other's life for the rest of their lives. So they decide to lean into the bond and find out why fate put them together. And once they open up to one another, magic, literal magic. It is so beautiful. It's so hard because I did read her entire backlist, which I regret because I should have like savored them, because now I'm just like waiting for her to write something new, and I gave them all 5 stars. So it's so hard to pick my top favorites, but I will be doing a video on just her books. But I had to put this next one on the list, and that is Divine River. If I had like if I had to pick a top favorite book of the entire year, it would be Divine River. Like, this one was my favorite read of all time, probably one of my favorite books of all time. Like, I've definitely put it in the top 5, maybe even the top 3, okay? Real crazy, I know. I loved it. I literally loved it so much. And this is a male romance, and one of our hero grows up in a very small conservative town, is struggling with his identity and how he identifies. He knows that he likes men, and for the longest time he has identified as a gay man, but he's not able to open up because his family is not accepting, the people in his town are not accepting. He also loves the balance of being both masculine and feminine, and he's never really been able to explore that outside of his home. So a new neighbor moves in across from him and immediately wants to become his friend. It turns into a friends to lovers romance where our other hero supports our main character's journey of discovering himself, and just shows that he will love him no matter how he identifies, no matter what he wears. And it's such like a cathartic read, if that makes sense, because it just shows so much more than the romance. It shows our characters being confident with themselves, shows this beautiful growth and journey of prioritizing like mental health as well. It is just the most complex plot. Like, I can't even explain it. I feel like I'm not doing it any justice, and I just need everyone to read it. It's so freaking beautiful. This one is Give Me More by Sarah Kate, which is the 3rd book in her Salacious Player series. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are putting praise on their list for this book. And I read this entire series, and I gave pretty much every book in the series 5 stars. I really do love Sarah Kate's writing and the setup she has in this series. However, Give Me More was just my favorite, and I think it's actually one of the best polyamorous romances that I've ever read. So in this book, it is a poly romance, like I said. Each book follows our characters who own a BDSM club. They're a group of friends who ended up investing in this BDSM sex club, and they kind of all have their romances throughout the series. Our heroes is married to his like college sweetheart. They've been married for a really, really long time. Them are kind of exploring their different kinks and things to like spice up their marriage a little bit, and they end up inviting their best friend into their relationship. So their best friend does everything with them, practically lives with them, always goes on family vacations with them, road trips with them, and they end up inviting him into the relationship, and our hero discovers that he really likes watching his best friend and his wife be together. So they kind of explore that, and it opens the door to this gorgeous polyamorous romance. Favorite things about poly romances is the dynamics, like the communication, what it takes to make three people really work in a relationship, like three totally different personalities coming together as one unit just fascinates me. And again, this one really did feel like a soulmate energy. Like each character was meant to be together, and the way they so easily complemented each other, just effortless. I adored this one. It was so steamy. It was so emotional. I found myself like bawling, literally crying when I was reading this one. It's just the best. I loved it so much. The next two books I also read like in the last 2 months of the year. They were reads that kind of just like snuck in there, and they ended up making this list. So the first one is Power Plays and Straight A's by Eden Findley and Saxon James. I did a whole video on this series. This is a part of the CU hockey series, and I literally did a whole video on it because that's how obsessed I am. First time I made that video, I've actually read nothing else but Eden Findley and Saxon James. I've already read like 10 of their books because I've been so intensely obsessed with their writing. But this is the first book in the CU hockey series. It's a series of college hockey romances that are all male-male or MM. Foster is amazing at hockey. He's had a crush on his twin brother's best friend, but his brother has basically made it very clear that his friend was off limits until his friend ends up going to the same college as him, and his brother asks him to kind of like keep an eye on him and like help him adjust. So kind of like takes it upon himself to make sure that our hero is having like a really fun college experience, and they end up having a friend Sliver's romance. It is so cute. This is also an opposites attract romance. Oh, I love the writing. I would recommend any book in this series. I'm just recommending this one because this one really got me obsessed with the entire series. But I finished this whole series, and then I started another one of their series, and I gave them all 5 stars. So pick any book written by this author duo because it is amazing. And the last book I want to recommend is another hockey male-male romance, and this is Hidden Scars by Andy Jackson, and this is a dark enemies to lovers hockey romance. Preston ends up getting transferred to this college hockey team, and he has quite the reputation of just not being a nice person, so nobody wants to room with him. So Jeremy ends up being like the one that kind of like draws the short end of the stick and ends up being his roommate, and neither of them really like each other, but they can't deny their attraction for one another. It is an enemies to lovers romance. This is a dark romance. Our hero Preston goes through a lot of abuse from his father, which you see throughout the book. I think you even see it like in the very first chapter. It's very intense what he goes through, and it's kind of what makes him lash out to people, if that makes sense. This is another book that kind of like pushes the bounds of consensual, non-consent, BDSM, darker romance, and our hero Jeremy just understands him and they click, and this one is so freaking good. Like, their romance is intense and it's dark, but it's also very romantic, and I just love how you get to see like what makes our characters the people that they are, and also like see them fall for each other. I'll say if you like Untouchable by Sam Mariano, Hidden Scars is a really great book to read as well, because our hero Preston reminds me so much of Carter Mahoney, like literally so much. These books are dark romances. Both of these books deal with consensual non-consent. Both of our heroes kind of have like a darker upbringing, so yeah, highly recommend both. I feel like if you love this book, you will love this one as well. Those are my top 10 books of 2022. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I had so much fun making it. I know it was a really long one because I couldn't stop gushing about these books, but they are some of my favorites. So I am excited to see what my favorite books of this year will be. Please leave a comment down below of what your favorite books were of the year so I can read them. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. It means the world to me. I hope you guys are all staying happy and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!